Talk Radio 890 News. Now let's go back to more talk. Here's my buddy, Bob Lassiter.
Welcome back, fun seekers. 7 minutes after the hour, 5 o'clock, a Thursday, April the 25th, 1991. The Mad Dog, Lassiter with you at WLS, Talk Radio 890, Chicago's talk station. Friend of the cable thieves. Champion of the downtrodden. Meanest man in the world, grannies. 591-8900, the telephone number, 591-8900, Woodridge. Hi there, Wood, you're on the air at WLS.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon.
I wholeheartedly agree with you about the cable companies should not be able to go into your home, whether it be physically or through an electronic signal. That is a direct invasion of privacy, not to mention the possibility of them causing some kind of possible damage. A quick scenario, they send their signal through. It zaps everything in the box. A spark arises, somebody's sleeping in the home, they die. Could the cable company then be sued for wrongful death?
Well, I think so, but it's very unlikely. What they did is they had, over a period of time, installed these particular boxes with this very action in mind, and all it really did, when I say fried, it did make them spark and stuff like that. It just shut them down. All the chips were coded so that if a certain signal came in, they just shut down. The term fried is pushing it, probably.
I understand, but it's still anything done by man through an electronic sense, still there's something could go wrong. I look at the great cable service we get. Change one channel to the next. It's louder, it's quieter, it's louder, it's quieter. Some channels don't work, and yet then now they're going to charge. They say that they would like to charge you a certain amount, but you always wind up having to buy a package. Why is that?
Beats me.
A form of extortion also?
No, sir, it isn't. 591-8900, 591-8900. To the northwest side it is. Either northwest, you're on the air at WLS.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Listen, two things here. Let's go back to your hypothetical paint salesman. If I am your paint salesman and my neighbor's stealing paint, if I put an oxygen-activated dye in the paint so that 2 days after you painted the stuff on your wall it turns purple, and then you come over to me and say, "Yo, Bill, you're the paint expert in town here. Can you come and check out this paint on my wall that's turning purple?" And then I come in your house and say, "I gotcha." Have I busted in your door? If you're dumb enough to come to the guy who you're stealing the paint from...
Well, I think you're off base here. Let me see if I can't give you something that hopefully you would be able to identify in this particular situation. Is it illegal to cheat on your taxes?
Yes.
Of course it is. And it's a scoundrel who has committed a heinous crime who does that.
Right.
The Internal Revenue Service tells you that it's illegal to cheat on your taxes, and to help you be honest, about 2 out of every 100 people who file income tax returns are audited, where they will be caught, in all probability, if they're cheating on their taxes. They know that that's what the audit is all about, and they know that the audit is possible. Now, let us assume there's a phone number in the book that says, "We'll help you with your taxes for free in your home." And it doesn't say that it's from the Internal Revenue Service. It doesn't say what the purpose of the help
Bob,
is. The guy shows up at your door.
Guys to come and fix the cable. They knew they were talking to cable.
Yes, sir. They knew they were talking to cable,
and
they invited people into the house to fix the cable.
And they knew that they had.
Excuse me, sir. They invited people into the house to fix the cable.
They invited agents of the cable company.
Right, sir. Just like you would have invited what you thought was a tax planner or helper, a certified public accountant, into your house to help you with taxes,
and he turned out, he was going to.
And he turned out, sir, to be gathering evidence against you to prosecute you. That would not hold up, and it's not right.
But there's a difference here. The cable company only looked at the cable company's box.
No, sir. They then said, if you don't give us $500,
okay, that's
we'll
a separate issue. That's a totally separate issue.
No, it's part of the same issue.
Okay, if I catch you breaking into my house...
They didn't. The cable company came into the house...
And I say to you, Bob,
sir,
give me back the stuff...
Sir, you're forgetting something. Sir, you're forgetting that the cable company didn't say, we're coming here to check your box to see if it's illegal. cable company said, we're coming here to fix your box. But that's not why they were there. They were there to gather evidence.
Every time the guys come to look at the broken box, they gather evidence.
Right, sir. 591-8900, 591-8900. This time it is Morris. Hi there, Morris. You're on the air at WLS.
Hello, Bob.
Hi.
Hi. One point here. You know, it's a touchy situation. What kind of contract did these people sign when they got the cable service?
Well, sir, if they had signed a contract that said that you can come into my house and gather evidence without the benefit of a warrant or without reasonable and probable cause, it would have been an illegal contract.
Oh, well.
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay, let's.
You cannot waive constitutional rights.
Okay, say the person signs a contract. The contract says that, you know, if you are found to have tampered with the box, you face a $500 fine from the company or prosecution.
You cannot waive your rights, sir, and you have a right not to be extorted. That's extortion. I mean, it's a wild, arbitrary number. No way.
Okay, because I
doesn't hold.
The person, you know, what if the person invited the cable person in the house to check the converter box that the cable company owned?
Sir, what if the person that they had come there was dressed in a bunny suit? Oh, what difference does it make? These people entered under false pretenses. You have a right to exclude anyone from your home that you wish to exclude whatsoever, without rhyme or reason, unless they have an order from the court to enter your house. Be it a policeman or anyone else, you must have legal documentation, and if you don't, you can exclude anyone. And if somebody comes to your house under false pretenses, they have violated your constitutional rights.
Okay, well, whatever.
591-8900, mega drop-offs all of a sudden. 591-8900. Mr. X. Hello there, Mr. X. You're on the air at WLS.
Hi.
Hi.
I'd just like to say that was probably a scientific Atlantic system. And if I were, like, say, if going to go into a joint action against this cable company, I wonder who let out the information on how to put the other chip in the box. Maybe the cable company let it out. You know, baiting people.
I have no idea, sir.
Well, another thing is, the government. I believe the government's wrong, or the cable company's wrong to do this. But the government does this all the time under regulatory law in our country. How come a regulatory law can supersede our constitutional law? I'll give you an example. Like, you take, for instance, if you go in for a pollution check, why do they ask how many miles are on your car? Things like this. You know, if you understand statistics and things, that could be, correlated and kept in records. See how many miles you drive. Aren't you being forced to testify against yourself, in other words?
How's that testifying against yourself, sir?
What I mean is, eventually the government's going to correlate all these different regulatory agencies that gather information on us. Or doesn't the IRS do that already right now?
Thank you. Thank you ever so much. Testifying against yourself. Weird stuff, man. It's got to be full moon out there. Ah! Ooh! Ah! 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 Oh, God. Oh! Head's spinning around. Stars, little birdies. Round and round and round and round they go. Okay, where were we here? Elmhurst. Hello there, Elm. You're on the air at WLS.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Yeah, I agree with you. I see it all as, the cable companies have, a clear ability to use leverage, in an instant which, similar to, other types of services that are, like the electric company and that are very, there's basically a single supplier. And they have this ability to abuse their leverage, and they're really, I don't see any way in what they're doing is going to really do anything but raise revenue for them through those fines.
I'm hard-pressed to think of any other industry that would be granted that type of authority or that type of leverage over consumers, other than the cable industry, which obviously is in bed with almost everybody who holds an elective office on a local level in this country.
Well, it is pretty unique in terms of the way they do have the hook directly in. I mean, other if you compared it to computer services, those are all, generally over the telephone line. So
I would have utterly no problem whatsoever if they did the exact same thing in the exact same way. However, the consequences were simply, we're going to take your service,
right.
We're going to put you on a list, put it in the computer, and buddy, you ain't never going to get E-SPAN again.
You stole my next point, because that's the whole thing that would. The whole point is, where are they coming from? Are they trying to raise revenue? Or are they trying to keep the crimes from happening? Are they trying to keep other people from doing this? In order to do that, they could have clearly just done what you just described. I mean, there's no reason other than just, I guess, they're just abusing their position. And I've seen it in terms of the way they market. I just increased my cable service. They told me they'd sell me HBO for a month. They'd give me HBO for a month free. And then if I ordered some guide with it, they'd give me another one. So they threw in Cinemax. And first of all, they don't tell you that you have to pay to get that disconnected. And next, when the bill came, they didn't have the credit on there. They made you call and ask for that. They were hoping to slip that by. So I just see the way they practice, and I'm kind of wondering, where is the control?
It makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But going back to my analogy in the monologue about the vacuum cleaner with a hidden radio inside, the one that was missing the tube. This makes me a little bit uncomfortable, but really what you're leasing is the cable itself. That's really what you're leasing, and they provide the box so that you can transfer the cable signal into your television set if you don't have a cable-ready television set. So that's really the service that is provided. Just as, your phone, it's the line, really, that you're leasing.
Right.
The service that you're buying. And as uncomfortable as this makes me feel, it seems to me as though we're really talking about the vacuum cleaner with a hidden radio. And if you find out that if they didn't want you to have the radio, then they shouldn't have put it in there. And if they don't want you to have the HBO without paying for it, then it shouldn't be on the regular cable, and even though it's scrambled. And that's getting real gray here. I mean, I gotta really push my ethics and morals here on that one, but I can make a minor argument for it.
Well, see, I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear. I think what they're doing is they are pushing the burden of what should be theirs off on the public. The burden I think they should hold is the ability to provide a system that you can't steal easily. And what they're doing is they're coming out with the most cost-effective method of finding the people that didn't, and now to go ahead and try to get $500 more bucks out of them, I think it's just a matter of raising revenue. I mean, they could increase their technology so that it's just absolutely impossible to steal.
Well, I can't remember exactly how you phrased it. Apparently, I've got a sieve for a mind this afternoon, since you only said it about 40 seconds ago. That was something to the effect of they're passing the burden off to the public. I think you make a good point, and I thank you for it. 591-8900, 591-8900, the telephone number. WLS Talk Radio 890, the weather forecast, partly cloudy, not quite as cold tonight. It'll be partly sunny and warmer tomorrow. Still the same damn forecast. This guy's ripping us off. An overnight low of about 47 degrees. Tomorrow's high about 74. The official temp, 65 at O'Hare. Along the lakefront, 57 degrees. WLS across the clock traffic with the world's most dangerous traffic reporter, Bill Keller.
And so far,
informative discussions the way you really talk on WLS Talk Radio 890. From 312 and 708, dial 591-8900. 591-8900. Now, back to Bob Lassiter.
To a car phone it is. Hi there, car. You're on the air, WLS. Hello, car phone.
Yeah, Bob?
Yes, sir.
Hi, greetings from Indianapolis. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Okay, I had to come back to that symbol that you gave in regards to leasing a vacuum cleaner with a partial radio in it. I can safely assume that at that time you have to sign a lease agreement that specifically states that there may be, or that there is maybe a partial radio in it, but you would have to pay a fine if you do decide to tamper with the equipment. And that's why I have to get back to you on it and say, hey, at some point somebody does get a contract, you sign a contract.
Well, yes, sir, except there's one minor problem here. If I sign a contract like that, I tamper with the equipment, and have already agreed to pay a $500 fine if I do. If I then don't pay the fine, the only recourse the company has is to take me to court and sue me. But this company is using the recourse of threatened criminal action unless you pay them the money. That's extortion.
Yeah, but it still come back. What is the company cannot do more than what it spells out in a contract.
Well, yes, sir, but you cannot waive your constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And that's in essence what if there is such a contract, and I don't know whether there is or not in this particular case, but for the purposes of this conversation, there is.
Okay.
If there is such a contract, it would be an illegal contract. I mean, you can't say, if you don't give me the $500, then I'm going to prosecute you for stealing.
Okay.
But if you do give me the $500, I won't.
Okay, but maybe the contract does spell it out that either you pay a $500 fine or there is a criminal prosecution.
That's extortion, sir. That is illegal.
I don't know. That's why it is.
Sir, if I come over tonight and let all the air out of your tires,
Yes.
and you call the police and say, hey, Lassiter, let all the air out of my tires, I've committed some type of mischief or something, some minor criminal offense. But if you then come to me and say, look, if you give me $500, I'll drop the charges, that's extortion. You're not allowed in this country to use the threat of criminal prosecution as leverage in a civil matter.
Okay, I don't fully agree with you because it said there is an agreement written someplace, and I would be very surprised.
Well, then I'll tell you what. The next time you have a dispute, try using criminal prosecution to get money out of the people and see what kind of grief you have.
Okay, I may have to do that, but I hope we never get to that point. But
Me too.
As big as the cable companies are, I would be very surprised that they take this action. Now, I have to agree with you, a different step would have been better. I think they are just using scare tactics at the moment of scaring people out of their wits. That's the one thing. The other thing is I would not be surprised with all the technology that's available at the moment that they can tell almost exactly who is tampering with equipment. Because, as you said earlier, what the mind perceives is what technology can make, and I believe that full-heartedly. So I'm sure that almost all of the people that are in offense at the moment are already known by the company. I think they're just using scare tactics at the moment.
Let me give you another example that maybe will make it easier for you to understand. Shoplifting is illegal. A lot of stores have signs posted, shoplifters prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I'm sure you've seen them.
Yes.
If you go into the 7-Eleven tonight and you take a loaf of bread and try to hide it under your coat and walk out the door, when they catch you,
yes.
If they said, oh, you're trying to steal a loaf of bread from us, are you? Mm-hmm. Well, if you'll give us $500, we won't prosecute. And you say, what are you talking about? I've only stolen this one loaf of bread, for God's sake. They say, well, maybe you stole others that we didn't catch you for. Mm-hmm. That's extortion. If they say to you, hey, you're trying to steal a loaf of bread. That's $1.59, fella. And you give them the $1.59 for the loaf of bread, that's not extortion.
Okay.
It's perhaps collecting the money in a fashion that it's not normal at the store, but it's not extortion.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll have to talk to some lawyer friends about it and say, hey, this is the case, and is it yes or not illegal? But I think at the moment we're still talking hypotheticals, and as I said, as big as the cable companies are, I would be very surprised if they have not thought these things through properly.
Oh, well, okay. Maybe I haven't made myself correct. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is legal. I'm saying it shouldn't be, because they have cut a deal. Mm-hmm. They've cut a deal with the government, the local governments, that this is legal, but nobody else could possibly get away with anything like this.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
And that's what I'm saying. It's wrong.
Yeah, but at the moment, it's predominantly scare tactics, and I would be very surprised if out of those 300 people, if there's more than half of that is going to pay that fine.
Thank you very much.
I'm Jim Johnson, WLS Talk Radio 890 News. Now, let's go right back to my buddy Bob Lassiter. Hi, Bob.
Thank you, Johnson, my journalist.
You're welcome, sir.
Rock throwing, good for nothing.
Going to hold that against me forever, aren't you?
Yeah, you wish. In any event, let me see if I can't. Let's go back to the example that I just used with the last caller. You go into the 7-Eleven, they catch you stealing a loaf of bread. You're trying to get out the door. They stop you. They have two options. They can make you pay for it, or call the cops. Well, 3 options, or they can let you go. They cannot extort money from you. They can't say, if you give me $100, I won't call the cops. That's wrong. It's more wrong than what you've just done. But let's see if we can't put it in this, and I think we can all agree and understand that, right? Okay. Let's see if we can't use the same story in this similar situation. The clerk thought that he saw you walk out the door with a loaf of bread. He's not positive of it, but he thinks that he saw it. So, an hour later, they send somebody over to your house who knocks on the door. Yes, hello?
Hello there, Mr. Jones. I'm the bread inspector. There appears to be some tainted bread in the area, and I'm here to see if you have any of it. Do you mind if I come in to inspect your bread for bad stuff?
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Yes, please come in. Guy comes into your house, goes out into the kitchen, picks up the loaf of bread, says, Aha! Aha! Do you have a receipt for this bread? No, you don't. Oh, you're in big trouble now. If you don't give me $500, I'm going to turn you in for shoplifting. Oh, my God, that would be a terrible thing. Well, that's in essence what happened. Okay, let us... But you're probably saying to yourself, well, but geez, the guy stole the loaf of bread, and that's not so bad. How about if the clerk was wrong? Guy comes up to your door.
Hello, Mr. Jones. I'm the bread inspector here. There seems to be some tainted bread in it. Do you mind if I come in to inspect your bread?
Oh, no, thank you very much. Come right in. The bread's out in the kitchen. Guy goes out into the kitchen, inspects the bread. Clearly, it came from the White Hen, not from the 7-Eleven, for God's sake. He couldn't have possibly stolen this.
Oh, this bread appears to be fine, sir. I don't see any taintedness here. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, sir. Well, what great damage was done? Not a hell of a lot of damage, I suppose. You never knew that you had been suspected of stealing a loaf of bread, and you weren't wrongly charged with stealing a loaf of bread. But the problem here is that we have certain beliefs and concepts in this country, and that is that a person is entitled to due process. A person is entitled to justice, equal justice. Which means if you're suspected of a crime, you should A, be notified of it. B, if you're going to be subjected to a search, you should be notified of it, as well as the proper authorities should be notified of it. And a search warrant should be issued. That's the problem. In and of itself, a big deal? Nah. But in the overall scheme of things, damn big deal. Loaf of bread today, cable service tomorrow. How about the day afterwards? Or the day after that? That's how it starts. Sound petty to you? Okay. What can I say? I can't argue with that if it sounds ridiculous to you. If it sounds like it's really pushing to you, just don't come crying to me next Saturday, okay?
Once again, here's Bob Lassiter.
Again, not to belabor the point, and I promise very, very briefly before we get back to the calls. This is not to say that you have a right to steal cable service. You don't have a right to steal cable service. This is not one of those criminals' rights things where, the liberals are mollycoddling. Yeah, that's the word. The bad people, the cable service thieves. You see, you have a right to not be subjected to an illegal search and seizure, to not be subjected to unreasonable suspicion. You have a right. But unfortunately, for you to have the right, and that right has got to be granted to everyone. So this is not so much a case or an issue to try to feel bad for 312, I think the number is, 300 and some odd thieves. And this is about 250 million Americans who have a right not to be subjected to illegal searches and seizures, who have a right not to be subjected to being deceived and duped, and have a right to not be the victims of extortion. To a car phone, it is, hi, car, you're on the air, WLS. Hello there, car phone. Once, twice, bye, car phone. This time it is Elgin. Hi there, Elgin. You're on the air, WLS.
Hi, Bob.
Hi.
The second half of your scenario there, the extortion half, I have to agree with. However, the first half, the right against illegal searches and seizures, that only applies against governmental entities and or people acting in concert with them or at the behest of the government. So...
well, this is clearly the case with the cable companies acting in consort with the government, because the cable company has extraordinary powers that no one else has.
But the question is, did the government ask the cable company to do this? Okay.
I doubt that they asked the cable company to do it, but they're certainly more than willing to accept the cable company's gathered evidence.
That's right. And it would stand up in a court of law if...
Well, I'm not suggesting that it's not legal. I'm suggesting that it's not right. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the laws in the state of New York have been written so that this can be done. There's no doubt in my mind about it. But there's considerable doubt in my mind as to the morality of it, the ethics of it, and the properness of it. Isn't there in yours?
No. Yeah, I can't really argue with that. I'm just saying as a matter of constitutional law, it's not an argument that could be made in court to suppress the evidence obtained and win.
Let me conduct a defense and I'll get them off. I defy a jury to not accept my arguments.
Well...
I mean, we're talking about cable thieves, make no mistake about it. And we know for a fact that on a certain day, those people stole cable services. As to whether they did it yesterday or have been doing it for 20 years, we have utterly no way of knowing. And to charge them for that day's worth of cable service, I think is perfectly reasonable. And if they won't pay it, sue them for it. And I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Well, I think that, I don't know what the New York statute reads regarding that, but if any day constitutes a separate offense, then, and frequently statutes do read that way,
yes,
then they would be in their perfect right to request the state's attorney or the district attorney of whatever jurisdiction that individual lives in.
No problem whatsoever.
Commence prosecution.
I've got no problem whatsoever if they can prove that I stole it the day before, too. But if they can't prove it, then in my humble opinion, we're talking extortion.
One other thing I wanted to say, and this is one point that I agree with you on totally, the thing about the American people that I've noticed, and I think you basically said that in many talk shows, the American people are willing to give up constitutional rights if they think it's someone else's rights they're giving up. What the American people do not understand is if you give up someone else's constitutional rights, you're giving up your own.
Exactly, because the criminal has no rights. Only the accused have rights.
That's
and
correct.
We all stand the possibility someday of being accused. And we're sure going to want our rights then.
Well, here's one final note. I'm frightened by some of the things I see come out of the United States Supreme Court, and I think anybody that reads some of those opinions, especially concerning criminal procedures, should be just as frightened.
Me too. Thank you much. 5918900 Westmont. Hi there, West. You're on the air at WLS.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Bob, I'm an attorney. I do a little criminal law and family law, and I think maybe the person before me just basically set down the rule on this matter.
Well, I'm not an attorney, sir, but I frequently play one on the radio.
Oh, that's okay. Nobody will mind. Just how much do you charge everybody when they call in? That's the question.
45 cents.
45 cents. Okay.
And actually, I'm not charging you. I charge Mr. Turnip. He gives me 45 cents for every call I get.
Fine. Now, the situation, the way I understand it over here, and why I'm saying the fellow before me may have answered the question, at least from what I heard, is that the constitutional rights, the question of the application of constitutional rights to when somebody comes in and false pretenses or not, and finds out that you're doing something illegal. A private party can come in and find out about your illegal actions and report that to the police or report that to the various authorities.
Mm-hmm.
Constitutional protection against the suppression of evidence for an illegal search and seizure only goes against governmental bodies, governmental authority, or people who are acting in a governmental capacity.
Well, I appreciate all of that. Let me see if I can bring you up to speed. Apparently, what we have here in the state of New York is a law that grants to this cable company, as well as all others in the state of New York, privileges that are not granted to virtually anyone else. Can you think of any other company in a business contract that says that if you violate this contract, the company has the right of saying to you, either give me an outrageously large amount of money or I'll prosecute? That, to me, as far as I know, that's extortion, and that's illegal, and I know of no other
That would be, well, let's put it this way. If you're saying that what the contract says is that if they don't give the box back, or...
If they don't pay $500, then the company will prosecute. If they pay the $500, no problem. No prosecution.
Okay, you got to bring me a little bit up to speed. What's the illegal act, or what's the act that they're saying would the $500 would apply to? What did they do wrong?
Okay, these were cable subscribers who took the cable boxes and altered them to receive pay channels. The company, the cable company, sent an electronic signal down the line that burned out all the boxes that had chips that they weren't supposed to have.
Okay.
So the people, thinking that their cable service was on the fritz, called the cable companies. Cable company said, "Oh, we'll be only too happy to come right over and repair it. No problem." When they came in, they opened the box. If it had illegal chips in it, bam.
Okay, from my understanding, they would have the right, if they come in, they would have the right, and if they found that that's illegal, that that's, theft of their property, they could prosecute under that part of it. Okay,
which I think they should have the right to do.
Independently of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
However, no, as far as I know, I would argue that it would be against public policy, and any contract that is against public policy can be voided and held unenforceable for any company to say that to trade the prosecution of criminal rights for money. But you're right. I mean, it could be a prima facie case of extortion.
Well,
in other words,
exactly. Well, would this be extortion? You and General Motors Acceptance Corporation have a deal. They sold you a car and financed it. You promised to give them $500 a month. You drive the car for 3 months. Don't send them the $500. General Motors, to the best of my knowledge, has basically two choices here. They can either sue you for non-performance of the contract,
right,
or they could literally file a complaint with the police. They could literally charge you with stealing the car. They rarely do, but they could. However, if they say to you, okay, you've got this $10,000 car loan, if you don't give me $50,000, I'm going to turn you into the cops. Isn't that extortion?
That would be extortion.
General Motors can't get away with it?
All right, anytime, and that's why I would say my belief would be that you could go to, that you could raise as a defense in the criminal action or file a counter complaint for extortion based on the contract.
Well, except that apparently in the state of New York, the law is written for the cable companies to be able to pull a stunt like this. I'm not saying that what they're doing is illegal. I'm saying it's wrong. It's terrible.
No, I would say that I would even go a step farther. I would say that the contract as written is illegal, at least to the degree of being unenforceable, because it violates a basic public policy issue. The issue that you cannot take money from people inadvertently or of just exorbitant quantities that has no relation to actual compensatory civil damages. You just can't say, I'm going to grab, I will forbear prosecution of a criminal claim unless you give me $10,000. I mean, that is the legal definition of an extortion.
Well, again, I don't care how the law is written, and while I've never been to law school, and I've only walked past one once to the best of my knowledge, I would love to argue for the defense in this one. Okay. If I couldn't win this one. With a jury, of course. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, take care.
5:52 the time, WLS Talk Radio 890. The weather forecast, partly cloudy, not as cool tonight, partly sunny, warmer tomorrow, an overnight low of 47, high tomorrow of about 74. It's 64 at O'Hare along the lakefront, 58 degrees. WLS across the clock traffic with Bill Keller is next.
WLS Talk Radio 890 puts you on the radio. From 312 and 708, dial 591-8900. Now, back to Bob Lassiter.
Interesting. Got about a half of an ordner here to get things up and running. Most people seem to feel the same way. Let's go through these, see what we have here. 591-8900, by the way, is the telephone number, 591-8900. To a truck phone, it is. Hi there, truck. You're on the air, WLS.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you? My comment is that the police or the governing bodies will, of course, let these cable companies extort the people, because if you look into the history back a few months ago, Chicago Heights, Illinois, half the politicians in the town got busted because they accepted bribes from the cable company to let them in. So, of course, they're going to not let anything like that go by.
You got a problem with it, though?
Oh, of course I have a problem with it. But, here, number one, it's stealing, okay? If you're stealing their movies or whatever, you're stealing it. But if they come into your house, you couldn't get away with that. If you went into and just like you were giving those little examples, you couldn't rent me a vacuum cleaner and then I find it does something else and do it, and then you can't come back to me and charge me more money for it. But the government, or not the governing bodies, maybe we say, the townships and whatever, they're all getting kickbacks. Piece of cake.
No, I don't know that they're all getting kickbacks, but I thank you much. 591-8900 McHenry. Hi there, McHenry. You're on the air at WLS.
Just a couple of corrections, Bob. There's no chip in your converter box there, so don't be taking around looking for it.
Well, sir, it all depends on the converter box. It can be a chip, and it was in this particular case.
It's basically a trap, weighs a couple of pounds, and it's either outside the house or on the pole.
Sir, it all depends on the cable service. In this particular case, it was a chip inside the converter.
Well, that doesn't ring any bells to me, and I work for cable. I'm an independent contractor. And the reason we can't permit people to run a line over their garage and into the house and get all these services free, we're trying to keep the rates down. And as far as kickbacks, we have more of a problem with people who want the cable and can't get it. In Woodstock, the people filed a class action suit because they couldn't get the cable as fast as they wanted it.
So you have no problem with what the cable company did, huh?
Well, cable is working as hard as they can to get those services out there, and if we can prevent people from stealing the services, then we can keep the rates down, and everybody's happy.
Okay, thank you much. Off it is this time to the Northwest. Northwest, you're on the air at WLS.
How you doing?
Fine, thank you.
I kind of agree with some of what you're saying, and I kind of disagree with another part. I think the fellow that just was on before me, he mentioned that the people who were receiving the service were stealing. They were.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I mean, you can't cheat an honest man. I mean, if they weren't taking the service, they wouldn't have got burned. But I do have a problem, and actually shooting that silver bullet down the wire, I don't have a problem with that because the cable company owns the cable.
Yeah, maybe they own the cable, but that doesn't give them access to your house for any reason.
Well, if the people weren't cheating, they wouldn't have got burned. I mean, I'm no saint, but, you know, you can't cheat an honest man.
Sure you can. 591-8900. Do it all the time. Springfield. Hi there, Spring. You're on the air at WLS.
Hey, hi, Bob.
Hi.
Good to hear you this afternoon. Another good show. I'd first like to say, yes, I do have a problem with it, but I'd like to make a couple comments if I could. I took a class last year that dealt with cable. That was my major in college is radio, and I took a class dealing with it. And we were told that, cable companies had passed legislation in the 80s and back when they first started becoming a major power, against the ownership of satellite dishes and things like that. In other words, they were trying to monopolize the industry, as it were. And I'm basically against that. I have friends who, have satellite dishes or at least had them, and I think that if somebody wants to spend the money and have their front yard look ugly, they ought to have the right to do that, just as well as if someone has, wants to subscribe to cable. My position is that the cable companies gouge the customer left and right, as it is.
So it's okay to steal from them?
Well, no, it isn't. That's the thing. The other side of it is, yes, they were stealing, and if the old saying, if you play, you pay. But I agree with you. I think that I agree insofar as they had the right to send the signal down the line. But once they found out that the homes were receiving it illegally,
Well, how about if you were taking bets on your phone? You're running a numbers game,
okay,
and you were using equipment that doesn't belong to you, of course, on lines that don't belong to you. It'd be okay for the phone company to send a charge down the line, kind of zapping you so you drop the phone, maybe half electrocuting you.
Well, see,
because you're conducting illegal activity on there. That would be okay then to send that line into your house, huh?
I understand what you're getting at, Bob. The problem is as far as I see it, there's 2 points here. One is it your right to, do as you see fit with your phone in your house? And the other argument is it their right, since you're using their lines to do as you see fit with their property? And I'm not so sure that there's a definite answer because you could use that argument with, tapping the phone in investigations like for drugs or other things. The police say they can tap your phone. Is that legal? I don't think that's legal. I've got problems with that. So
I thank you much. 591-8900.
Bob Lassiter.
Thank you, Johnson, the journalist. Well, it's kind of interesting so far. I don't really know what I expected in the way of response. I don't know what I thought you guys were going to say, but you are doing something that I didn't expect. That is focusing on the obvious. Yes, it is stealing. There are no two ways about that. It's stealing because you understand that the cable company is the one that provides HBO, that the only way to get HBO is by paying an additional premium to the cable company. So there really isn't any doubt that these people are not only stealing, but they are knowingly stealing. Okay, I concede that. And I suspect that the vast majority of you do not steal cable services in any shape, manner, or form, have never considered doing it, and if you don't have them, it's because you either feel it's not worth it or you can't afford it, and, hey, such is life. But the one thing I don't think I expected is that we're dealing here with a phenomena in this country, and that is the willingness to give up other people's rights. Because everybody we've talked to so far has totally and completely ignored the illegal search and seizure, the deceit and the extortion. It would be outrageous to allow people to negotiate with those who had committed crimes against them for monetary settlements for the promise not to prosecute. It's also, for you and I, it's illegal to do that.
Hey, bozo, I won't call the cops for breaking into my house if you give me $10,000.
It's illegal. It's extortion. And totally ignoring the fact that these people were set up. They were not warned that if they continued to use these services, that something like this might happen. They were tricked and deceived into calling the cable company, granting the cable company access without knowing why they were granting them access. They thought they were granting them access so the cable company could fix their receivers, but that's not at all what the cable company had in mind. The cable company had in mind gathering evidence against them without really having to prove guilt, just some suspicion. Kind of like if the guy that owned a TV store suspected that you might have stolen a television set from him, and he came to your door and kicked it in to come in to see whether or not you had. But since you don't steal cable services, apparently you're more than willing to overlook the extortion and the illegal search and seizure without the benefit of a warrant, without the benefit, of legal proceedings. Interesting. Very interesting. And on such a small level, too, such a small scale, relatively insignificant thing as, stealing HBO. I know stealing is stealing, and it's wrong, and I'm not trying to justify stealing in any shape, manner, or form, but it seems to me that we have two crimes here. One is petty theft, and the other is damned serious. Incredibly serious, or at least, I guess a bleeding heart liberal would think it is, because we're talking about constitutional rights and precepts that this country is founded on. Man's house is his castle and all that kind of stuff. May I assume that you people are only too happy to do away with the rights of the accused? That's what we're talking about here, the rights of the accused. 300 and some odd people are involved in this. 300 and some odd people who are suspected of stealing cable services have been given the offer by the company that if they come up with an outrageous amount of money, $500, an arbitrary amount of money, and that's a hell of a lot of money for most people. If they come up with this money, then everything's fine and dandy. If they don't, they will be prosecuted as criminals, as thieves. If they do, hey, all is forgiven. That doesn't trouble you at all. It doesn't trouble you at all that there was no warning. Their premises, their homes were entered under false pretenses so that thieves could be caught. Any other things you'd like to do away with to catch thieves? Or any kind of criminal? 591-8900, 591-8900. Do you remember who it was that gave you your first teddy bear? Think about that now. Let me take a wild stab in the air. I'll bet a nickel it was your mother. And I'll bet you she helped you to name the teddy bear. And I'll bet that she helped you to take care of it. Give it lots of love, that kind of stuff. Am I right? I think the odds probably are that I am, at least for most people anyway. It was Mom that gave you your first teddy bear. Why did she give you a teddy bear? She gave you a teddy bear because she knew what a real special friend it could be. That. And unfortunately, she probably lived in a world that said, grown-ups don't have teddy bears. Can't think of why they shouldn't. Your mom knows about teddy bears. She knows how special they are. Why not give her one? Yeah, I'm serious. The Vermont Teddy Bear Company says it's time to start thinking about Mother's Day. And they have a very, very special Mother's Day bear. Comes with a card and all kinds of goodies. Interested? 1-800-829-BEAR. 1-800-829-BEAR. I mean, if anybody knows about teddy bears, it's got to be your mom. Bet she hasn't had one for a long time. The Vermont Teddy Bear Company. Guaranteed teddy bears. Made in America. 1-800-829-BEAR. To a car phone, it's either car, you're on the air at WLS.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Hi, good afternoon. Man, I think you've lost it today.
You think I've lost it? How's that?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a couple questions.
No, wait a second. You made a wild accusation. You said you think I've lost it. How is that?
Well, okay. I think there's lots of things to talk about. You do bring up a lot of things, but this, you're stretching here today. You're stretching.
Well, what the hell are you calling for?
Well, let me. I guess
you don't want to take part in the conversation. You want to critique the show?
No. Listen. All right. The people that were receiving these unauthorized signals.
Yeah.
Did they know what they were doing?
Obviously.
Obviously they did.
Yeah, they were thieves.
Did they know they were stealing?
They were petty thieves.
They were stealing.
Yeah, I've already conceded that, sir.
You conceded that, okay.
Right, because what the issue is your apparent willingness to give away very basic constitutionally guaranteed rights. Because the cable company also committed a serious crime. 2 of them. Illegal search and seizure and extortion.
Extortion, I guess I could put that off as plea bargaining.
It isn't plea bargaining. Plea bargaining, for example, if you steal a camera from someone,
right, and
they prosecute, it's not between the guy that you stole it from and you. Once you file charges against someone has been accused of committing a crime against the state. The judge can order restitution.
Okay.
He can say, okay, you are guilty of stealing the camera. I give you a 6-month suspended sentence, and you have to give the guy the $500 that the camera cost. That's restitution. It's not what we're talking about here. It's a $500 payment to avoid prosecution. That's extortion.
Okay, I guess in the broadest sense of the term, it's extortion. I'm not a big fan of the cable people, but, I think that they have a right to track down. The people not knowing that this little thing was going to happen to their box, this, that, and the other.
May I ask what general business you're in? Don't tell me the company, but just what general business you're in. You sell paint or whatever.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying is that I think that the cable company has a right to track down.
One second, okay. We'll say for the purposes of this conversation, you're an industrial paint salesman.
Okay.
And you have reason to think that your next-door neighbor's been stealing some paint out of your car.
Okay.
Your paint samples. Do you have a right to go over to his house and, under false pretenses, enter that house, gather information illegally without a search warrant, without any real cause, and use that evidence against the person? Be thrown out of court, sir. As well it should be.
Okay, but that person is not subscribing to a service.
No, sir. That person has stolen paint, and if you have reason to suspect he has stolen paint, you're supposed to go to the police and say, hey, I think this guy's been stealing my paint.
Okay.
And then the police get a search warrant and go into his house, and if he's got your paint, he's got trouble. But you don't have the right to enter his house under false pretenses.
Okay. So what? So you're talking about not the silver bullet going down the line and blasting the
No, I conceded that legally that's not, there's probably no problem with it. I thought that ethically and morally there was a problem with it. Legally, no. But
okay.
it's the entrance of the house under the false pretenses.
That they sent the repairman in to ostensibly repair the little box, and the guy says, aha, there's an illegal chip in here, and I'm turning you in.
Unless you give us $500. That's what it comes down to. Unless you give us $500, then we'll turn you in.
Well, I think the $500, it could be conceived as extortion, and I grant you that point. But I think,
See, I'm not trying to justify the people stealing the service.
Okay. Well, it just sounded like, and I'm not, I think that the erosions of the constitutional rights are a serious offense. But I think that to defend the people that were stealing...
No, I'm not trying to defend them. I tried to make it tantalizing, okay?
Okay.
Tantalizing is what I tried to make it, because the real issue here is not the theft of the service. That is wrong. No two ways about it.
Okay.
The real issue is the draconian methods of enforcing it.
What would you suggest would be a more fair or...
Take the damn cable box out, put them on a blacklist so they don't ever get cable again anywhere. That's what I'd suggest.
Yeah.
Because I don't, did they just put it in yesterday? Have they stolen 29 cents worth of service? Has it been in there for 10 years and they've stolen $2,000 worth of service?
Okay.
These are impossible things to determine. So, hell, take the box out, put them on a blacklist.
Tell them they can't have cable anymore.
You got it.
Steven.
That would seem reasonable to me.
Well, that's too simplistic. I mean, it's almost too real world.
Thank you much. Be good. 591-8900, 591-8900. 4:51 the time. The weather forecast says something to the effect of partly cloudy and not as cool tonight, partly sunny and warmer tomorrow. An overnight low of around 47. Good for the little green things out in front of the apartment. Tomorrow's high about 74. The official temp, 65 at O'Hare along the lakefront, 57. WLS across the clock traffic with the ever popular is next.
Now here's Bob Lassiter.
Back to the phones we go again. Another car phone. Hi there, car. You're on the air at WLS. Hello, car phone.
Yeah, hello, Bob.
Hi.
Wanted to comment on this whole thing. I have split emotions on what you're saying here.
Oh, I know what you mean. So do I.
The first half of it I thought was brilliant, and I think I have no problems with them. If they have a procedure for checking out tampering, you subscribe to taking in their signals, and they have no obligation as to what signals they send in there. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the initial part of it.
Could I ask you to really get to the bottom line quickly, because your line's breaking up really bad.
Yeah, I'm across Indiana. I might. The second half, I agree with you 100%. They have no right to do that. Although that you might take note that companies like Illinois Bell tap your phone lines to see if you have extra phones that you're not paying for on it.
Yeah, but
they don't seem to be tapped for extortion. I also run a business, and
they don't have to enter your home though to do it. They don't do it under false pretenses.
Well, that's true.
And then they also tell you that they do things like that. See, these people were not given any advance warning.
Yeah, public information.
Right. If they had said, next Tuesday we're going to, or somewhere between next Tuesday and a year from now, we're going to do this, and if you've got illegal equipment, we're going to catch you. That would have been perfectly fine in my book.
Okay. But I won't argue that point.
Got to run, my friend. Your line is absolutely horrible. I do apologize, but makes it almost impossible for the people sitting at home to hear what you're saying. I, of course, with the headphones on, can zero in on the sound. Again, comes down to an interesting point. Yeah, no question about it. We're talking about petty thieves here. People who stole paid channels. No two ways about it. They were wrong. It ought to be against the law. It is against the law, and I've got no problem with that. But it's a much larger issue. And how readily we are willing to give up other people's rights to catch petty thieves when there's a much, much larger crime involved here. The sanctity of somebody's home, the right to due process, all that kind of good stuff, just been thrown out the window. As well as the companies being permitted to extort, to do something that you could not do. It would be illegal. You would be committing a felony if you tried to pull a stunt like that with someone who had committed a crime against you. Conversation will continue. 591-8900, 591-8900.